Today we're going to be creating some snowman figurines out of Sculpey clay. This right here is an example of a snowman that I made last year. And if you see here, we baked this in the oven and then afterwards painted it. This is the one that we created at our workshop that was on Zoom. The Sculpey clay, the nice thing about Sculpey clay is that it never dries out. So when you're using it, if you leave it, say, for a week or two, it's not going to dry out like regular clay. We have these little wires here. These wires are going to be for the arms so that they don't fall apart. Any little tiny little feature that you have can come apart pretty easy unless you have some support. So that will be added in for the hands. So this will take, and that can just kind of stick into the clay with the clay around the actual wire. So a couple things to note when we're putting things together, that we have the different parts. We want to make sure to put them together well enough so that after they're baked, they don't come apart. So each of those little sections of the snowman were put together like really well. So the Sculpey clay, when you first pick it up, it's going to be not as soft, but the more that you kind of roll it out a little bit, the easier it will be to handle and to mold and to sculpt. So the Sculpey clay, once you're done with the actual sculpture, what we're going to do is you're going to take and put it in the oven at 275 degrees for 15 minutes for each half inch. So this little Sculpey guy right here, basically is all I had to do was put this in for 15 minutes, and then once it's dried, once it's cooled, then you can actually paint it like the one on your left there. So to start out, you would take and create each section of the Sculpey snowman, and then you would start creating some different details. So I would take this board here and to flatten out the clay, so I can create the scarf that's around his neck. It's good to find different tools around your house, so you can figure out. You can come up with different details that you can put on anything that you create with Sculpey. Basically, it doesn't have to be a snowman. Here at the Makerspace, we have a whole toolkit. That white box on the left there is a whole toolkit with a bunch of different things for scoring and for creating different things. So I flattened out this piece of Sculpey here, and with this I'm going to take a knife and I'm going to cut this to create the scarf shape. And here are all the tools here. We have quite a few different ones. If you want to experiment with this, definitely come in once we are open again and ask us about the Sculpey, and we can help you create some different projects. We can even do some by Zoom if you like. So here I am cutting out a strip. The strip is, like I said, is going to be the scarf. So I have this right here. Now that's a little thick, so I'm probably going to stretch it a little bit and kind of, mold it to however I want. Now at the very end, I'm going to take and kind of fray it at the end, kind of like that, like an actual scarf would be. So you see right there, the scarf. And then I would do that at both ends. And then before I put too much effort into it, I'd want to make sure to kind of wrap it around the snowman like I did here to make sure that it all fits. And you can take and kind of stretch it out if you need more space. It doesn't have to be totally perfect. And then you can add in other details like the nose and the eyes. The eyes, what I did was I took a pen and actually poked a hole in that, made a little tiny ball of clay and stuck that in there for the eyeball. which gives it kind of a cool detail. And you can see there where I scored the scarf with, you can do that with a fork, maybe a toothpick. Toothpick's a great tool to use for that. Anything you can find at home to kind of create different details that you'd want in your Sculpey shapes. Um, so if anyone needs any of the Sculpey clay, we have it here, and we can help you out with a project if you'd like. So right now, what I'm doing is taking and scoring the the scarf like that, by kind of creating it kind of all, and I can mash that together. The same thing with the segments of the snowman. It's good to score the part that's going to go together. That way it adheres together. You want it to adhere together beforehand, before you're baking it. So like I said earlier, so it doesn't fall apart. So that is that is basically it. I mean, just kind of play around with it. And actually, for the hat, what I did for the hat was I took a piece of that flat material, and I just kind of wrapped it around and cut it off until it kind of looked like the hat. And then I took another piece on the bottom, um, to make it look like the bottom of the hat, that little detail there. So play around with that, and if it doesn't come out the way you want it at first, you can just roll it back up and continue to um, shape it until it comes out the way you want. I mean, the main thing is to have fun with this. I mean, it's a kind of a fun thing to do. And like I said before, this it's I love Sculpey clay because Sculpey, doesn't dry out. You don't need to add water. Actually, do not add water to it. That's definitely important. If you need it to be softer, just keep kneading it. That heat that you use for your hands will actually mold it to become softer. So right now I'm taking and wrapping some clay around the wire for the arm. And if you notice here, you can see the wire, you can kind of see it through. It's kind of a little bit translucent. That's okay. Don't worry about that, because after you bake it, you're going to paint it. So when you paint it, you're not going to be able to see that. As long as the wire isn't coming through the actual clay, then you're perfectly fine. But it's important to have that on there. And I kind of bent the wire on the other side so that's holding those presents there that I created. Um, if I and the other nice thing about putting the wire in is that you can kind of take and pivot that. So that's about it. Yeah. So just a reminder again: take and bake this in the oven. Make sure an adult is doing this. Bake it on a cookie sheet at 275 degrees for 15 minutes. Let it cool. Don't worry if the clay burns it all, because again, you're going to be painting it. And this is an example right here of me. I can remove the arm and kind of position it in different ways. You might want to do the same thing with the head. If you put one of the wires in between the middle ball and the top ball, you can have the head actually rotate. So then, play around with that, see what you come up with. And I'd love to see some of your artwork. So once you're done with creating some stuff, please feel free to send a picture in. I'd love to see what you come up with. Thanks for watching, and have a good winter.